The groundbreaking M2 chip makes its way for the first time ever on Apple's tablet line, being introduced alongside the brand new iPad Pros for 2022. These iPads were introduced as well with the newly redesigned 10th gen iPad. It has to be said up front, there's minuscule changes here, at least for the average user. Think of this as your typical S upgrade because most of the improvements are under the hood when compared to its predecessor. There's very little new here on the surface, but then again, the M2 just obliterates the competition. The M2 chip is currently the fastest chip on any tablet, so with other tablets not even coming close to touching the mighty iPad Pros, Apple has little incentive to innovate here with drastic changes, so it makes sense just a bit. The question is though, just how fast is it versus its predecessor? And is it worth it to upgrade? Both of these questions and more will be answered, but before we begin, real quick, only about 8% of my viewers are subscribed to my channel, and I'd really love to bring that number up. My goal is to hit 60K before the end of the year, so if you want and can, do me a solid, because over here on TheJuan&Only, we always pump out quality content. Alright, let's get the show on the road and go over a really quick unboxing. Alright, so we're going to go over this one very quickly because it's more or less the same as any standard iPad unboxing. So first, in case you're new to the iPad world, with the iPad Pro line, there's two different models, an 11-inch and a larger 12.9-inch. But aside from that, and of course pricing, they are identical to each other except for one very distinct difference, which I'll highlight later on in the video. Which also means though that the unboxing experience will be the exact same for both. They'll just be scaled up or down depending on which model you get. But you do get a very nice and clear image of our brand new wallpapers, which I think are pretty gnarly. We'll then feature iPad Pro color matched branding alongside a few Apple logos on our sides, and on our back we have our serial number information as well as an indication as to how much storage is featured. For these two, I opted for the baseline models. Let's quickly remove our green pull tabs that aid in this unboxing, lift open the lid, and we're first presented with our massive new tablet wrapped in this frosted plastic. But as always, we'll set that off to the side for now to see what else is in the box. We do have our obligatory literature packet titled Designed by Apple in California that has a quick start guide, warranty information, and a pair of white Apple stickers. Other than that, we do also get a charging brick, and it happens to be a 20-watt USB-C adapter. And finally, we do get a braided USB-C to USB-C cord used to charge and sync our device. It being braided is a cool bonus because the regular ones seem to tear apart after like 5 uses. And so now, let's remove the frosted plastic from our iPad and power that sucker on for the first time. Okay, so we know already that the newest and most talked about improvement on these iPad Pros is the implementation of the speedy M2 chip, which we will go over a few benchmarks in just a second, but some will still wonder, well, is there anything else that's new here? Honestly, no, not much. Ironically, the only way you can tell these apart is that the branding on the back now adds the Pro moniker. Odd. And so for those that solely upgrade to flex on everyone that you have the latest gadgets, you may have a hard time with these new Pro models. But it's not all doom and gloom. There are thankfully a few new things here that are small, but over time will prove to be great quality of life improvements for the iPad Pros, such as ProRes video recording up to 4K at 30 frames per second, Smart HDR4 for photos, Wi-Fi 6E, which should provide much improved download speeds when on Wi-Fi, and Bluetooth 5.3 versus Bluetooth 5.0 that's found on the prior generation. Other than that, that's all that's new, folks. I told you, it's a pretty standard S upgrade. But what surprised me is that pricing remains unchanged, with the 11-inch having a base 128GB model starting at $799, with the larger 12.9-inch again with a base starting storage of 128 gigs, but comes in at $1099. Seems like there's an abnormally large increase in price, but one other key difference that I mentioned at the beginning is that the display on the 12.9-inch is that XDR display, which is a stunning and expansive way to view HDR content. You only have have two color options for both models, silver or space gray, and both can be configured up to a massive 2 terabytes, but it'll cost you a pretty penny. That XDR again is exclusive only to the 12.9 inch, and it's something that has to be seen in person to truly appreciate. This video just cannot do this screen justice. If you have an Apple Store or Best Buy nearby, they always have some review units. You just have to see it for yourself. So now let's answer the question, just how much faster is the M1 versus the M2 by running a few benchmarks. So over on Geekbench 5, we run a single and multi-core test and get subpar results. They're not bad, but it's not anything that's going to blow you away. On single core, we get a difference of about 150 points, representing a less than 10% improvement, while on multi-core, the M2 iPad Pro scores in at slightly under 8,500, while the prior model with the M1 only scores a little under 7,300. Once again, can't hate here, these are some pretty average and decent improvements from one gen to the next, but now let's also consider graphical horsepower. What about those individuals that have to use their iPad Pros for video or photo editing, or perhaps even some mobile gaming? This is where running a metal test could help us, so I did just that using Geekbench's very own graphical scoring criteria. The new M2 comes in with a metal score of 33,700, whereas the prior model only comes in at 21,600. Now these are some more impressive gains, representing roughly a whopping 55% in terms of improvement. This might indicate that games that need a little more graphical horsepower will run a lot smoother, dropping less frames as a result, and could also mean that rendering speeds while video editing or overall fluidity while photo editing will be greatly improved. I wanted just a bit more reassurance though, so I went ahead and also ran some on-screen tests over on the GFX Metal Test, which essentially runs a series of simulations and records how many frames per second it's able to sustain at that certain simulation. It then takes the average and is pretty good at gauging at how well we can expect a computer to perform under heavy graphical loads. So once again, by looking at this graphic, you can see that across the board, there were improvements with the M2 by sizable margins. So yeah, Apple's not playing when it comes to all that power that is held within their very own Apple Silicon. As my final test, I also exported the same exact 5-minute project that had exact but minimal edits and then exported it, but was surprised to barely see an improvement with the M2 iPad exporting the same video just a singular second faster. But for larger projects, you can expect those seconds saved turn into minutes. And not only that, but the M2 future-proofs you a whole lot better than the M1. Okay, so as we saw, the M2 is a beast on tech steroids, and overall does come in with solid gains across the board in terms of performance. But there is one final new thing here that is only software exclusive to the M2 iPad Pros, and that is the new Apple Pencil hovering gesture thing. Which honestly is cool, I guess, but I see it as more gimmicky than anything. So basically, if you have your Apple Pencil like 1 millimeter away from the glass, it'll create an animation. And it totally depends as to what you're doing. For example, if you're drawing, then it'll sort of preview your stroke so you know where the pencil will land. You can also hover over different drawing tools to kind of preview them, and certain applications can preview an entire animation simply by hovering over. Very similar to the 3D Touch feature on older iPhone models from back in the day, for whoever remembers that. Man, I miss that feature so much. So in short, I personally don't find it useful. It is cool, but nothing you absolutely need to upgrade for. And really, that's it. That's pretty much all that's new. So I reiterate, I feel that because the iPad is in a league of its own, Apple is able to scrape by with just the most minimal of upgrades. And so if you already have the prior gen model, that is the iPad Pros with the M1, please don't upgrade unless you have a very specific reason to do so. If you're unsure, you probably don't need to. Also, if you do need that extra horsepower though, say maybe you use an iPad for just about everything, I'm talking as a hobby, for your work, and for when you're off the clock, then go for it. But the average person really doesn't need to upgrade. The M1 models are still very much as capable. Apple expanded on a formula that's already great. You have the most powerful iPad in the world, and so it's only getting better and better with each iteration. If you're brand spanking new to the iPad Pro line, then you're in for a very big treat here, especially with the buttery smooth ProMotion XDR that offers up to 120 Hz refresh rate on that massive 12.9 inch display. While very little has changed on the exterior, Apple somehow managed yet again to expand on everything that makes iPad Pros so stunning. Now with the M2, this means at the bare minimum, you can expect 5 to 6 years of support and overall stability. That's something competitors simply can't say, with some Samsung tablets essentially becoming obsolete and no longer supported after just 2 years. The iPad Pro line is best when you complete the package with a Magic Keyboard plus Apple Pencil 2. However, that is a pricey route to go, but on its own, it still is a very formidable machine that rivals many desktops in terms of raw horsepower and is just oh so versatile. Guys, if any of you all own a prior iPad Pro, drop your thoughts down below. What I need everyone to know is that this is your basic S-style upgrade, with mostly all of the improvements being either software exclusives or upgrades to the chipset and therefore performance. That's been my review of the all-new M2 iPad Pros. Let me know that you enjoyed this video by clicking the like button down below, and stay tuned for my iPhone battery drain test for the 14 line coming up real soon. Until next time guys, bye for now.